Hello everyone, welcome back to another AFL Club by Club draft analysis. In this video we're going to be looking at Port Adelaide and their draft hand. They currently have picks 13, 29, 36 and 50. They obviously offloaded Houston in this trade period, which was their biggest movement, but now they've got a pretty decent draft hand. You'd like to say those, especially those top three picks of 13, 29, 36, you can do a lot with it in such a deep draft. And let's start with pick 13. I feel like we have different ideas of what each needs. I'll start with mine because I've said this with a few other clubs, a direct replacement of a player that's just left or might be on the way out. Dan Houston replacement, I look at Toby Travaglia, has that straight in, straight out, straight in, does the exact same thing, and that real offensive flair that he has to his game I think would add a lot to it. Are we different or are we the same?
Somewhat. So, and I will preface this by saying that we obviously have chats all throughout the year, and Dylan, you probably brought my attention to this to some degree. The similarity of Toby Travaglia and Angus Clark is one that you've been really hot on. And when I sat back and thought about it, I agree that their most pressing list need is a little bit of speed and ball use off half back. But I think you can get that at pick 29 with a local boy in Angus Clark. And then I think you can bring in and fill a different list need at pick 13, because what you're losing out, the offset of getting Angus Clark rather than Travaglia, he's probably a little bit more competitive, has shown a bit more in the contest, Toby Travaglia, but the fact you're getting a homegrown talent means I think that offset is worth it, particularly with the fact you can then get a high-end talent as well.
100%. And I think, some of the things you're hearing about Angus Clark coming out, like he's from quite a remote location in South Australia. He's had to be travelling 4 hours to get to training and get to matches and stuff like that. So I reckon recruiters are going to be looking at that. I think they really liked his competitiveness in the national championships, and someone a little bit more raw than a Toby Travaglia, but someone that you might look to develop into that role. So I think with pick 29 or 36, that might be somewhere around the mark for Angus Clark and a local boy as well, being South Australian. I think with that pick 13, there's two ways you can go with this positionally. You've got you said the Dan Houston replacement, which we went with Angus Clark. I think there's a key position forward hole there. We haven't really seen anyone pop up and grab that. There's Ollie Lord, there's
Mitch Georgiades,
they just haven't really been able to get the guy. So then you think with that pick 13, it's probably Armstrong, it's Shanahan that we're looking at.
Maybe Whitlock. Now,
the other tangent I want to go on here is potentially a small forward type player. 13, it's getting a little bit high for that type of player, but you've got Taj Houghton around the mark. What if Murphy Reid slid and got down to that sort of a pick? Would Port Adelaide be sort of tempted to go someone like that, who's sort of a forward half midfielder type? And then I look at some of those other ones that are around the mark, maybe a little bit deeper, Jesse Detoli, Ollie Hannaford. I think that would fit a need, because I think you noticed in that final series that Port played, other than Willie Rioli, they didn't have anything creative going on in the forward half from the smalls.
Yeah, I think the only reason that I didn't go with the small forward is because they drafted Tom Anastasopoulos and Lockie Charlson last year. And I think you have to back your draft hand from last year. They've had a year on the list, but you have to give them a couple of years before you start looking past them. And you have to take the view that they're going to develop, unless you've seen something glaring as you expected them to, and they're the ones that will be able to fill the role in the next couple of years. I think if you then take another small forward at the top end, then that's probably overloading, would be the way I'd look at it. So I am going down the key forward path. I would agree to some degree with Murphy Reid. Absolutely, you'd take him if he slid to pick 13, which probably becomes pick 15. But I just don't think he does, and I don't think it's probably best for his footy as well, because you want him in that midfield, and you're going to have Rosé, who's ahead of him. You're going to have Butters, Horne-Francis. So from a Murphy Reid fan point of view, I hope he doesn't go to Port. I don't think he does fall down that low either. But I'd be looking at the key forwards and someone like a Jack Whitlock.
If we are looking at the key forwards, do you think Shanahan and Whitlock probably are ahead in the sense that they're from the country? They're both country zone. The interstate clubs tend to look at those players over a metro player like Harry Armstrong.
Absolutely, and they're both entirely from the country as well. Like you look at someone like a Jack Whitlock, who's from Shepparton, that's 3 hours out of Melbourne, as is Moama. So they're not sort of half and half from the country. They're going to have to move regardless. So certainly, and it also gives them a higher ceiling as well. The fact that they haven't had the training and expertise of players from a metro club.
We move down to a pick 36 at pick 50. I should bring into consideration they've got Rome Burgoyne and Louis Montgomery, his father-son. Rome Burgoyne, father-son Louis Montgomery, part of their NGA to take into consideration. Neither, I think, are above a pick 50. So if they're going to use that pick 50, they might not actually use.
Was Barrett in there too? Did you
Yeah, Benny Barrett too.
Yeah, Barrett in that concept, but. It's interesting. I wonder what they'll do with that pick 50 if they use it on either. Burgoyne, I'd like a little more in terms of, I think, upside and flexibility on the field. Louis Montgomery, I don't think adds anything to their midfield or would just kind of be sitting around in that sample team waiting for an opportunity. But if we look at 36, who are you two kind of, I guess, looking towards? I mean, that key forward discussion, I think Tom Sims falls to 36. So I think you could almost take the risk of, or a Floyd Burmeister even for that matter.
Yep.
I think those two fall around that range.
I agree, and I think that's what they'll do. Like, I think 13,
Yep.
they'll just take the most talented player on their rankings that's available. And then I think they'll, one of 29, 36, I reckon the Angus Clark play, that'd be a fantastic one for them. And then with 36, you do have that group of players that will be around that mark. I think Sims, you mentioned, is one of them. If there's not that top group that from my perspective, I would say players like Guerin are involved in that. Matt Whitlock, Alex Dodson.
Yeah, so it's interesting, and I'm glad someone brought up Alex Dodson because I've heard him linked to both of the Adelaide clubs. Now, the Adelaide Crows just at present, and it doesn't look like this is going to change, have the picks to be able to get Dodson. You're not going to take him at pick 4, and their next pick isn't until much later in the draft. And Port Adelaide have key position rucks in particular. They have rucks on their list. So I just don't think he ends up at Port Adelaide either. So I wouldn't take him. And your point about Sims and Burmeister, I see them as forwards that pinch it into the ruck more than the other way round. So I think that's okay. But taking a ruck first, I just don't think that suits what they need from a list point of view. A player I want to bring up, and maybe it seems like an obvious one because we talk about his brother, but I think Harry Charleston's one that could go to Port Adelaide as well and be a really sort of solid plug and play sort of player in the back line. You know what you're going to get with his ability to intercept, reads the play really well as well. So I think he could slot into that team quite nicely. I'd say he's probably more of a pick 50, and even that might be a little bit overs for him. Pick 50 probably falls towards pick 60 though. So I think he's one that could come in. Obviously, his brother's there, and
that'd be sort of that Dan Houston,
replacement
type
as well. Yeah, you get 2 bites of the cherry there if you're not going to take anyone else, and you still want to fill a list spot.
Having the future first next year as well gives them a bit of flexibility as well. So key position wise, they can. I guess they've got the opportunity to go next year as well. So it's not all dependent on this year. But I think that was all from this video, unless you do have to add. But thank you all for watching. The other 17 clubs will be across our channel and Dylan's channel, so please make sure to check them all out. Thank you all for watching, and we'll see you in another video.